Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network.
Hi, I'm Sapphy.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team go over all of the storytelling, character, and world building in video games. Because it's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep. And this is episode 50. And I don't know what we're covering just yet, but before we get into the episode, if you'd like to contact us, you can do that on Twitter at Lore Together, on Instagram at Lore Together. This cadence is going to wear thin at some point. On email at loretogether@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, as well as help us reach our goals of getting console streaming capabilities for our live streams, as well as get early access to episodes, mini episodes, Q&As, which we will do more of both of those soon, you can do that over on patreon.com/loretogether.
Yeah, I think the latest Q&A, we edited it, and
it's up.
So,
all right.
Hope patrons, you're enjoying it.
So this is episode 50, and I turned it over to you this time.
Yes, you did.
So I have not glimpsed anything. I saw you with a book the other day, but I don't know if it was related to this or anything else. So I don't even know what the book was.
Okay.
It looked like one of our dozen gaming books, and that doesn't help me narrow it down.
Yeah,
so.
we do have a dozen. We have dozens of gaming books, because this household is going to be as nerdy as possible, apparently. So, well, although I frightened Mystic with the possibility of doing another Sims episode, and I do mean frightened, I decided that today I was going to focus on a character we both know and treasure. Specifically one that is like us, that they're here for the story and the love of retelling it. For our 50th episode, I decided to focus on everyone's favorite shaven dwarf, Varric Tethras of Kirkwall. Dragon Age fans, we're going back! I'm so excited!
Okay, all right.
I don't know
I'm down.
Did you get it? Was the intro good enough for you? You figure it out?
Yeah, as soon as you got who loves storytelling as much as we, I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he really is the one who's like us in that regard.
To be fair, there's only so many books we have that aren't BioWare.
Yeah.
And I'm doing Mass Effect.
I was mad that you noticed me with a book. I was like, well, that kind
Look,
of
for all I know, you could have been doing Forgotten Realms, D&D, something relating to Neverwinter Nights or something like that. I had no idea.
No, I don't. That doesn't interest me as much. Though there were some other things I was thinking about, but this one finally, when I realized this kind of also touches on some other lore stuff. We're gonna focus a lot on what is concrete about Varric overall. So even though that's not a lot of people who know Dragon Age know there's a lot of choices, and those choices can affect character relationships and character reactions and character availability in the game, even though Varric is available in all of the games regardless of your stance. That's kind of the magic of who he is. He's the, I'll tell it to you like it is even if I don't like it, but I'm going to stick around because this is a good cause kind of character.
Yeah. Obviously, we've both played, I think I played Dragon Age 2 once.
Yeah. I played it two and a half times.
Yeah, I got really bogged down by the asset reuse and stuff.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't bother me as much, which is like the first Dark Cloud did the same thing, and I was fine with that.
I like exploring, and if everything you're exploring looks the same, it gets kind of boring.
Yeah, no, I'm here for the story. So.
And I'm here for the story too, but yeah. Dragon Age Inquisition, though, I have played probably close to a dozen times. I've only finished it twice.
I've finished it. I'll say I've finished it twice, and then I started another one, and I had a Tumblr for it, which I won't share here because we are a family-friendly podcast, and that was not a family-friendly Tumblr. It wasn't horrible, but there was definitely some cursing and some jokes that are meant for adult audiences. The books, World of Thetis Volume 1
which
and 2,
I have read none of.
You did start To Winter Nights.
Okay, I read the first short story in To Winter Nights.
Yeah.
That was about it. I have not read any other, what we called in our recent Patreon exclusive episode on beta canon.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we call beta canon. It is
outside of the video game.
Outside of So beta, I should explain beta canon actually here. I don't know if we explained it in the Patreon episode, but beta canon comes from Star Trek.
Yes.
Because
I think we did kind of touch upon that.
Yeah, but so alpha canon is all the stuff from the TV shows of Star Trek and the movies. Beta canon is everything else. The only thing that's official canon is what's on screen. Everything else is beta canon until it's contradicted or drawn in.
Exactly.
So, but my question is, I know that games, it's a little different. Mm-hmm. Are the books alpha or beta?
The comics, I would say, are more beta.
Okay.
And at least the books that I've read, which I was thinking about reading another one of the books that you gifted me a few years back, but I just didn't get the time, and I didn't think I could do it well enough. So I might read one to do another episode to talk about something in one of those books later.
Like I did with Mass Effect Revelation.
Or what I did with King Merrick. King Merrick basically had to touch upon some of the, 3 different texts we actually have in this house. So, again, going back to my little essay point in that episode, which was episode 14, correct?
Episode 12, Dragon Age's King Merrick.
All right, I might have miswrote the... So, episode 12, if you haven't listened to him before, there'll be a little bit of stuff that's referenced here that kind of touches on that. In episode 12 with King Merrick, and also our mini episode, A Theory of Dragon Age 4 with Mythal and Lyrium.
Which is the last mini one that's available to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one, you might have to scroll. That was like...
I want to say it was around 20-something.
I say scroll, assuming that you're on some sort of scrolling device, because that's what we all own.
It was between episodes 20 and 21. It's literally between Nuka-Cola Part 1 and Nuka-Cola Part 2.
Okay. So, there will be some stuff referenced here.
What a weird placement.
It's all the stuff Sapphy talks about. Those episodes will have some stuff that we're going to talk about today. And anything that isn't necessarily super concrete one way or another of our alpha or beta canon, I'm not going to touch upon a lot of it.
Okay.
But I'm going to reference what we have to do so we can get the full story of Varric and where he is as of right now. And people are talking about Dragon Age 4, unfortunately, because there's a shakeup with with BioWare's team on that.
I can run through... I think I know where he is right now. Well, no, I know where he is at the beginning of Trespasser.
Yes.
After that, I don't remember. Because at the beginning of Trespasser, he's Viscount?
We'll get to that.
Okay, sorry.
We'll get to that. We'll get
I'll stop stepping on your story.
Yeah. Let's go on to talk about Varric Tethras of Kirkwall.
Probably should explain where Kirkwall is.
Okay. Kirkwall is kind of a free nation state city.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually across the way from Ferelden, which is going to be important with why this is where Varric is and gets actually entangled with Hawk. So...
Right. So it's a city nation state on a inland sea, kind of.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's a trading hub, or at least it has a history of being somewhat of a trading hub. So that is Kirkwall, which is Varric is from. Though although we meet Varric there first, let's take it all the way back to when his family of origin was still in Orzammar. For those of you unaware of Dragon Age universe, the Dwarves of Tethras are 2 main types. Those of the underground kingdom of Orzammar, which holds the last remnants of a once sprawling civilization, and the surface dwarves, who have left that all behind. The former is a society that is held to the tight caste system based on the station of your same-sex parent, with the noble caste being the highest, and the same of House Tethras. I see Mystic pondering something here.
Well, first off, I was unaware that it was based on your same-sex parent.
Yeah, that kind of comes up...
Which is a weird mix of classism and sexism.
It kind of comes up if you do the royal origin of the dwarf in the original Dragon Age Origins.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're of noble birth, one of your brothers kind of has this side chick who claims to be pregnant.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And if it's a boy, it's definitely going to be a noble.
Right.
So, and I think that is someone who's of the serving
Okay,
caste.
I remember that now, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The other one was House Tethras is nobility?
House Tethras is nobility.
Or at least was, or...
In Orzammar.
Okay.
In the original. There's some debate as to the origin of the house itself. The story goes that it was originally House Garin, a noble line that has produced kings. In fact, one such king, Auric Garin, had been convinced that his son, named Tethras, murdered his daughter, Unaria. Tethras' punishment was to be exiled from the kingdom, which underground means certain death. However, when he found out it was instead the infamous Carta Crime Syndicate who had done so, he was overwhelmed with grief. King Auric ordered numerous units of the Legion of the Dead to search the deep roads for Tethras. These expeditions would prove to be unsuccessful, and King Auric would change the name of his house to House Tethras out of guilt.
Okay, I know that's not...
There's a lot of stuff I'm going to explain to in just a minute, because there's stuff that I know people are possibly going to be unaware of, and this is going to happen a lot, unfortunately.
Like, you can't have Legion of the Dead crop up and not explain
Well,
that.
for those of you unaware, that's literally the next paragraph, sir. Mystic's having a hard time letting go of the driving seat here.
I'm sorry. I do most of the episodes. It's...
I know. You're just used to it. So for those of you unaware, the deep roads are the winding catacombs and caverns underground that currently house the hordes of darkspawn, the blighted beings that are the reason the dwarven civilization has lost its vast footholds underground. Centuries ago, when the first blight ravaged Thedas, city upon city of dwarven civilization fell to the hordes of darkspawn, overwhelming them. This is why Orzammar is one of only 2 remaining Taigs, with the second one, Kal Sharak, having been thought lost for centuries until recently in the Dragon Age history.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's...
Sapphy's also just reminding me of stuff that I actually know already.
Right, and Kal Sharak kind of deserves its own episode. A lot of this stuff kind of deserves its own episode. It's just a lot of that intriguing, interesting stuff that happens in a fantasy setting where you try to only explain one thing, and it's just a web of interesting lore. So hopefully someday we'll go back to them.
I leave that up to you.
Oh, of course. I'll happily do it. The Legion of the Dead are the dwarves' defense against the Darkspawn. These dwarves join by having a funeral ceremony and cutting all ties to everything they've known in life in order to tie up their affairs and serve the rest of their life fighting against the Darkspawn and other ills that threaten Orzammar in the deep roads. This is to say that for this story of the Tethras name, King Auric asked the most hardened and ruthless warriors that answer to him in his kingdom to find his exiled son. Varric disputes this story and says that heirs of House Garin took on the name Tethras, and then, when one became Paragon, which is being honored for outstanding achievement for the betterment of dwarven society during their lifetime, they began the official noble house of Tethras. One thing that many fans love about Varric as a character is that he has an opinion on everything and isn't afraid to share it. So there's some debate about the origin of Tethras. There's the grand story of, out of guilt, and then there's the very much more practical story, which that story is the one I believe is more likely, personally. That's just me. The noble house continued to collect wealth and accolades until the end of the Blessed Age, when it was found out that Andvar Tethras was fixing proving fights. Another thing that I have to explain now, provings are a sacred battle tradition that is believed to be watched and even approved of by the paragons of centuries past. Essentially a battle where it is believed to be the will of the ancestors taking shape. Provings are most notably used to settle debates and disputes amongst those in the noble caste, even though they usually sponsor fighters of the warrior caste to fight for them.
That's such a weird thing to have warrior be a thing that you're born into.
Yes. And there's a whole actual, mythos of why this happened. There's a story of 7 brothers who fit into different roles, and the rest of their line was of this caste. But we all know that's probably not true.
Right. It just seems very... So, there's the merchant caste, if I remember correctly. Is there a craftsman class?
There's I think there is an artisan.
That just seems very dumb.
Well, I mean...
To have your occupation be dictated by birth. You could have a whole generation of terrible merchants then.
We come from a culture that is very specifically about independence and choosing one's own destiny. But there are cultures that are very rooted in you're living upon a path of a chosen destiny, and that's very comforting to those people. So I think for us as, westernized Americans coming from, the idea that, we're able to choose who we are, and when it happens, it's just so exotic to think about the idea that you would be comfortable being told, okay, from the day that you're born, you're going to be a shoe salesman, and I hope you're okay with that. And there are a lot of people who take comfort being like, this was chosen for me. I don't have to think about it. I'll try to be the best shoe salesman I can.
But I'm not even arguing for personal choice over what your destiny is. I'm arguing like the goat from Fallout makes more sense than being born into your job, where you may not even be good at it, but that's your job. Like,
well, but if you think things are destiny, or you think things are predetermined, maybe you believe that you're supposed to be this level of competent or incompetent in the job.
Okay. To me, it doesn't seem like a good way of writing a society, but I could be...
You know what? You know why it's a good way to write a society? It's another way for the people who have power to keep power.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, yeah. And therein, Sapphy becomes jaded and explains away horrible things in the world all over again. But yeah, due to the weight of these kinds of fights, these provings, and the spiritual nature they take on in Dwarven society, Anvar had to be made an example of in Orzammar. Not only was his family exiled to the surface, but every one of the Tethras house and every lower caste house that was sponsored by or received patronage from that house was exiled. Hundreds of dwarves were exiled at once. Anvar took his wife Ilsa and son Bartrand to Kirkwall to now start their life as surface dwarves in a bustling city-state. In a few years, there would be an addition of family who would never know of the tradition of the civilization below them. And that would be the subject of our episode today, Varric Tethras.
Really? So he's a surface dwarf complete, like 100% then?
I think of it kind of like, an immigrant family situation, kind of like,
right.
So your family's is kind of like that, where you're descended from the first generation of actual Americans.
Yeah, and that's, okay, that I did not know he was, okay. The way he talks, I never expect him to be born on the surface. I thought he left Orzammar.
He is, but he was raised and entrenched by people who knew what they lost. And as we'll get into, they're still tied to that whole situation. Because
Varric doesn't think that way.
No. almost intentionally so. Okay. So, born in 9-1 Dragon, which, for those of you who don't know how the ages work, the reason Dragon Age is called its name is because it is the Age of Dragon. It's essentially a way of naming centuries by the Andrastian Church. We're not even going to get into what Andrastian Church is.
It's like not even...
They're big enough that they get to name calendars.
Right, but it's not even like centuries. It's not like a century. Sometimes it can be a couple hundred years or 300 years or something like that.
It depends, because they try to keep it to about centuries, but it's really more about the setting of the time period. Like, the first Blight really ruined a lot of stuff like that, because that thing went on forever. So, things like that. Varric was born in 9-1 Dragon and would then lose his father just 4 years later. So, as a young kid, his father just dies. Ilsa would cope by drinking, forcing Bartrand, his older brother, to grow up quickly and take responsibility fast for the Tethras' new responsibilities of being part of the Dwarven Merchants Guild.
Apologies. How much older is Bartrand?
So Bartrand was born in 893, blessed age. So that means he was 8 or 9. You add like 4, so he would have been 13. Yeah, in theory, that's kind of young. I don't think Ilsa took to drinking so hard so quickly right away.
That's fair.
But with any coping mechanism, it's a slow descent, I think. It's not like those made-for-TV movies when we were kids where essentially you'd watch something on CBS and somebody suddenly had a really bad day and they can't stop, making screwdrivers and hiding them in their water bottles when they take them to school. I saw that in a class once for health. And
my eyebrows are just up in surprise. Oh, okay.
yeah, but it's usually a slow descent in my experience. So also sometimes if it's business and you're talking about a family that did have a good reputation before fixing the provings and they're surface dwarves who might be willing to work with that, and you've got this really exceptional 13-year-old or someone who has to become exceptional, you never know. So we'll give Bertrand the benefit of the doubt that at least he figured his stuff out pretty quickly.
I don't know. What I remember of Bertrand, I wouldn't use the word exceptional, but...
I don't know. Being exceptional sometimes mean you got to stick up your rear end. Like, that's just how
fair.
it is.
That's fair.
So, Bertrand reestablished the family's fortune and was rewarded by being accused for having to stick up his rear end for the majority of his life by Varric. Sibling grievances aside, Varric would support Bertrand's growth of the family business by helping with the spy network connections in the guild, in addition to helping clean up the occasional mess. It's with the dealings in the guild that Varric first met Bianca Davry, a member of a surface family that sticks to their smith caste traditions. Bianca is an accomplished inventor who put her family in high standing in the guild by first inventing a seed drill, then a spinning frame, and finally a mechanical thresher, all inventions that make many agrarian tasks faster, more efficient, and produce a better product. There's more details, like if you wanted to look up what they do, but you can kind of get an idea of what they do, and she essentially sparks a revolution in how industry in Navarra and Antiva is done with these inventions. So these inventions make the Davry an extremely powerful family in the guild. This is probably why when Bianca and Varric began to be romantically involved before these innovations, Bianca's family would literally send assassins after Varric, knowing that any marriage to Bianca would be a political opportunity for the family, still pursuing traditional dwarven caste culture. So they're specifically a family, like, even though we're on the surface, we're keeping to the traditions of those below the surface. So
yeah, okay,
certain things.
Culture
like
clash.
Around this same time, or this is kind of an assumption for me. Some of this stuff I don't have exact dates for, so I'm kind of assuming based with the context clues.
That's fair.
So around the same time as when Varric meets Gurav, a member of the previously mentioned Carta, Gurav mentioned to his bosses his idea for an easy-to-operate repeating crossbow. Excited for the potential of this lethal weapon, Gurav was given funding for this research. However, each prototype failed to deliver. Varric decided to buy the 14th prototype from him. Without his knowledge, Varric showed this design to Bianca, who was able to make it work as Gurav had originally intended. Varric decided to name it after the brilliant woman who was able to make it work. So that, for fans of Dragon Age now know, that's why Bianca is named Bianca. She fixed this repeating crossbow so that it would actually work. Even though she's not the one who built it, she's the one who was able to make it go.
I knew none of that.
And
I knew none of that.
Never was able to get a prototype to work on his own. So
is that why everyone always gives Varric flack over the fact that he has a repeating crossbow, and like most people are like, it's unwieldy, it's like if you listen to the party banter in Inquisition, people always give him static over the fact that he has this big bulky crossbow and everyone else has regular bows.
I think the thing that you have to also understand about Varric is he's willing to think outside the box. He still acknowledges the box is there, he just thinks outside of it, This crossbow is part of the reason that Varric will introduce himself to Hawk in Dragon Age 2. The other reason we'll be witnessing Bertrand dismiss Hawk's request to join the expedition team to a sealed, abandoned dwarven thaig in order to uncover what riches may be sealed down there. Right after that exchange, Hawk is pickpocketed, and Varric introduces himself by shooting the pickpocket in the shoulder. He lets Hawk know that Bertrand's expedition has a solid lead, but still needs a path to the site. Hawk could have a way in by buying a spot as well as getting a good map of the deep roads. This is the beginning of a business partnership that turns into a deep friendship, canonically at least.
Yeah. That's interesting that he shoots him in the shoots the pickpocket in the shoulder. Is it in the shoulder or just like through the clothes?
It might be more of a through the clothes thing.
Because he does that in a non-canonical trailer for Inquisition. They had those CG trailers.
Yes, I do remember those.
And in Varrics, he's in a bar, or in a tavern, I guess you would say.
Probably the Hanged Man.
No, it's not in a location I recognize. It's like in the middle of like trees and stuff.
Oh, I'll be able to explain where it probably is because of I know what sets up the whole.
Well, it doesn't make sense. I'll cover it later. Remember to bring it up again because I don't want to step on your story because obviously we'll be bringing up Cassandra later.
We will be, absolutely. Hawk succeeds in obtaining the coin to invest and the map to be useful and follows with some cohorts to the expedition. There's, of course, other adventures. You meet the other people, but we're talking about Varrics Story, not Hawk's Story today. The lead to the primeval Tig proves to be good, but Bartrand is tempted with greed when they encounter an idol made of lyrium. So, again, let's explain something that you might not know. Lyrium is a substance in the Dragon Age universe that is used to enhance magical abilities. It's understood to be a mineral in the ground at this time, although listeners who may have heard our mini-episode with my theory about what may come up in Dragon Age 4 may understand that this is a somewhat ignorant view. We could touch upon that later. While most lyrium is blue, this lyrium idol happens to be red. To the group, this is a new discovery. Most of the red lyrium they see is covering the Tig, so there's basically veins of it through this Tig. However, the idol is found in its own room, where the group theorizes dwarves worship the idol. Although we'll talk about the idol a lot in this episode, it is really deserving of its own episode, and we'll probably have even more information revealed about it once the next Dragon Age game comes out. It seems to be very prominent, actually, in a lot of the trailers. Mm-hmm. It's just, they keep going back to it. It seems like it's something that who we're setting up to be the antagonist for Dragon Age 4 is focused on it, which I think they're going to do. If they're going to follow their formula, they're going to do their classic thing where there's going to be the surface level villain, and then there's going to be the underlevel villain, and I personally think that we're focusing a lot on the Fen'Haral thing right now, and it turns out Fen'Haral is actually kind of, a silly goose who doesn't realize that he's being a pawn in some other bigger game.
Which would be honestly a little impressive if somebody was able to pull that off on Fen'Haral.
I think I know exactly who could pull it off on Fen'Haral, which kind of insinuated that in that mini episode. Who I think
fair,
yeah,
but still impressive.
Yeah, Fen'Haral's been fooled before. I'm sorry. He's kind of a silly goose. When Varric passes the idol over to his brother, Bartrand decides to lock the group in the room and leave without them, forcing Hawk, Varric, and their compatriots they've brought along to find their own way out. Not only are they able to get out, but along the way, they're able to find a large sum of treasure that will set both of them up for life. This is what I like to call the wholesome kind of trauma bonding you can only find in a fantasy setting. However, Varric was not able to enjoy the wealth, for he returned to find Bartrand never made his way back to Kirkwall, or at least from what he could tell. Varric then takes on the Tethras business and assumes the seat in the Dwarven Merchant Guild. He is not invested in the guild totally, missing meetings and still spending much of his time in the Hanged Man Tavern in Lowtown. Varric is happy to have Hawk plan on sticking around in Kirkwall for the time being and continues to help Hawk in their own matters and battles. Although the player's choices may change Varric's story a bit in Act 2, which, again, if you don't know, the way they structured Dragon Age 2 is it's 3 acts. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And don't think of it like it acts in a play. Think of them as like novelettes, I think is a better way. Because they tie into each other, but they tie into each other like a serialized story that Varric would write and then sell. Not quite like building on each other like a play. So around in this Act 2 of Dragon Age 2, Varric reaches out to Hawk in order to organize a conversation of sorts with Bartrand. It turns out after years of being AWOL, Bartrand returned to Kirkwall and rented out a mansion. Varric is set on revenge and returns with Hawk as friends to see what the situation is. They're met with crazed guards in a mansion that appears abandoned and in disrepair. After a few battles, they finally get an understanding from Bartrand's steward, Hugin. Bartrand was going mad while keeping the idol on him after leaving the Deep Roads. After that, Bartrand sold it, but his madness just kept getting worse. He returned to Kirkwall in order to gain the idol back, even though he just sold it. He could still hear the song of the idol and forced the guards that he hired to eat lyrium in order to help them hear the song as well. It turns out the lyrium was the cause of the crazed state. Now, this is something that's known to Dragon Age fans, that there's kind of a lyrium madness. It's it needs to be handled very carefully, and mages usually don't go mad because when they're using it with their magic, it's expended in a safe way, and Templars use lyrium, and it's got an addictive property to it that is fraught when it comes to how Templars use it.
Right, but it's still a controlled way of using it.
It is a controlled way of using it. It's kind of also, to be honest, a way to keep the Templars in check because the church is their supplier. So,
great.
Yeah, you got to think about it like that too. It's kind of a fraught balance there. They do need the lyrium to be able to counteract mages' powers, but there's this underlayer of it as well. So you can't just feed raw lyrium to people without having some sort of like control to it. You know, so of course they went crazy. If you know Dragon Age, there was just no way they weren't going to go crazy. Bertrand has tortured the servants previously. I won't go into the gritty details of it, but it's kind of dark. And by the time the group has come up upon the situation, he has locked himself in a room with his servants, and no one has come out in days. After one more fight in that room, so essentially you get through the mansion, you fight the crazed guards, you find Hugin, you fight a bit more, you finally get in the room, there's a big fight there. You finally get to Bertrand, and bemoaning he lost the song, and he needs to hear it again. The idol has magically tainted him to a level that some would confuse for demon possession, but that's impossible for dwarves in a setting because dwarves can't be mages because dwarves don't dream. Another thing for another day. Bertrand is enthralled by whatever is behind the idol's power and has led him down this dark path. Hawk helps Varric decide the fate for his brother before closing that chapter for the fraught Tethras legacy once and for all.
I vaguely remember doing that, and I only played through Dragon Age 2 once because of the asset reuse and like some of the other things, like the respawning enemies randomly.
Yeah.
And the story beats kind of didn't always hit for me, but the characters, were great.
The character writing in Dragon Age 2 is kind of what saved it for me. Like, they're all compelling and nuanced and flawed in a good way. You're just saying that because he's one of my favorites.
No, I actually did find him quite boring.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's because they didn't go... They kind of left it at a weird end, if I remember correctly.
I think somebody suffering the kind of trauma Fenris did is not going to have a really satisfying ending.
That is fair. Also, Anders can go jump off a cliff.
Debates we should leave for mini episodes. Okay. As the adventures with Hawk continue through the years, it turns out that selling the estate Bertrand bought in Kirkwall is quite the challenge. The Ravani noble that was interested has concerns since there are reports of the mansion being haunted. Varric asks for Hawk's help and again to investigate. And again, this is in Act 3 of Dragon Age 2. There they discover floating objects, phantom voices, and finally a violent ethereal golem that they have to dispose of in a grand fashion. While this is going on, there are signs that Varric is susceptible to the Song of the Red Lyrium as well, acting out of character when speaking to servants he encounters in the mansion and other such things. He's just overly aggressive.
Right.
It turns out Bertrand had hung on to a small sliver of red lyrium from the idol. Regardless of whether Varric decides to keep it or dispose of it, the issue of the red lyrium's direct effect on the Tethras family is moot for now. So I won't go into all the things that Varric may do with what Hawk decided, like I mentioned before, because that is Hawk's story, specifically the Champion of Kirkwall story, that those who've played and loved Dragon Age 2 know so well. Whatever the player may choose, a friendship grows between Varric and Hawk during the game, with Varric leaving Kirkwall with Hawk at the end of the tale he gives to Cassandra, which is essentially the whole framing device of the game.
Which I thought was a great framing device.
No, I really liked it. And they peppered it in where it wasn't annoying. So this includes the tale of the Legacy DLC, wherein we learn that Hawk's apostate father helped in sealing up Corypheus.
I know of this. I've never actually played it or watched it. I have no idea quite what happens.
I played it, yeah. The Carta are involved in a plot to bring Hawk back to use their blood to unlock Corypheus. Hawk decides the fate of the Corypheus depending on if he trusts Larius or Janeca, which, if I'm mispronouncing names, by the way, it's been a while since I played these and I didn't get a chance to play it because little buddy. But these are two Grey Wardens who have two different ideas on how to control him. Larius believes they must kill him outright. Janeca believes they should use blood magic to control him and stop the blights. Either way, Varric will know how Hawk resolves the issue and is in the collection of tales that he tells, or sometimes decides not to tell. Okay.
I'm laughing because anytime the solution to anyone's problem is blood magic, that's not a good road to go down in Dragon Age.
No, specifically in Dragon Age 2. Like in Dragon Age 2.
Dragon Age 1, it's not better. Like, if you're a human or a elven mage, you have a blood mage that you accidentally help deal with getting rid of his phylactery.
But I will say, at least in Inquisition, there's a little bit more of a discussion about blood magic. It's still kind of like, don't murder people. It's not really a good idea.
Right.
But there's also a little bit of like, when you're desperate and you don't have lyrium, what are you going to do?
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. But you're right. In Dragon Age 2 in particular, if blood magic is your answer.
In Dragon Age 2, literally every single mage who's, I'm not a blood mage, 80% of the time, they're a blood mage.
It's just, I don't know. That part was poorly developed, unfortunately. There's a lot of great stuff that they could have developed better in Dragon Age 2. It was rough.
Which I do love the line from Dragon Age 1. Mm-hmm. It's like, I dabbled. You dabbled?
Yeah. So moving on, the next we see Varric is in the comic series we talked about in our King Merrick episode, which includes the Silent Grove, Those Who Speak, and Until We Sleep. There's a decent summary in our episode 12, but essentially in the quote-unquote BioWare canon, Varric helps King of Ferelden, Alistair Therin, to find out what actually happened to his father, the presumed dead at sea Merrick Therin. Alistair and Varric, along with the other Dragon Age 2 companion Isabella, do find the horrifying truth at the end of Until We Sleep. Along the way, they do recruit the aid of Maveris Talani, a Tevinter mage who married Varric's cousin Thorold. Maveris is still family to Varric, and the two get along very well as they help uncover the mystery. And Maveris is at that point a widow, but again is still very much family. Mm-hmm. So they her and Varric get along very well. It's actually kind of sweet to see. It's assumed after that adventure, if that is the canon that someone would follow, Varric is captured and questioned by Cassandra Pentagast. Cassandra is part of the Seekers, a secret order of the Chantry, which is the big church that we're not going to explain. That's part of Ferelden Norlay. They are typically the ones to investigate the failings of the Templars. However, Cassandra is more interested in the past dealings and whereabouts of the champion of Kirkwall, Hawk. Varric had left Kirkwall with Hawk after the beginning of the conflict between the mages and the Templars. However, Varric returns and his storytelling becomes the framing device for Dragon Age 2, as we mentioned, which you see throughout all the games in the DLC. It's peppered in and out. Every DLC that you get, it starts with that too. Cassandra brought Varric to the Divine Conclave in order to testify to the story and unknown whereabouts of Hawk. For those of us who remember Dragon Age Inquisition, we know that that was not to be so, considering the opening scene starts with the explosion that forms the breach.
The opening scene starts as soon as you click New Game.
Yes,
I remember that, and I was just like, what?
Which happened, and for a while you're like, that can't be right. No, that's right. Oh my gosh.
I thought it was just thematic. No, that is the timeline.
That's exactly. It's like, oh, you're ready to go? Boom. And this happened before the official conclave proceedings could begin. Thus, Varric is thrust to the mission to seal the breach and becoming part of the Inquisition, and will become shortly a close confidant to the Inquisitor.
Okay, so here's my question then, actually, from back before we were talking about the guy getting shot in the shoulder.
Yes.
Is that trailer has him there, like in this tavern.
Yeah.
Shoots this guy in the shoulder after he's accosting a waitress.
Yeah.
And Cassandra's nowhere to be seen. It's not Haven, as far as I can tell, but the explosion of the breach happens right outside. So where is that? I know it's not canon because it's just a trailer.
Yeah.
But you said there is something that might be...
I think Cassandra, at that point, realized she can't entrap Varric. Like, the whole, I'm going to lock you up doesn't really work on him. So, she didn't. I don't think Cassandra locked him up.
You think that she's just like, you're coming with me?
She's, and Varric actually genuinely is a decent dude.
Yeah.
As much as he's got a smart mouth, as much as he, doesn't trust all authority, especially if it's any authority that he has ties to.
He generally seems like somebody who sometimes begrudgingly does the right thing and works for the betterment of the world.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So Varric's ties to Red Illyrium become particularly important when it turns out that Corypheus's forces are tied to it, especially if the Templars are the ones that end up siding with Corypheus, because that's the lyrium they end up using, and messes them up even more than regular lyrium. Varric can give the Inquisitor information regarding his experience, and if Varric kept the red lyrium shard he found in Bartram's mansion, he will explain the pains he took to make sure it didn't affect anyone like it did his brother, including sealed in 4 lead boxes like Matryoshka dolls, and only letting researchers look at it for an hour once a week max. He even admits he still hears the song himself. After Corypheus attacks Haven, Varric coyly reveals that he has someone who can help with the battle against him, introducing Hawk to the Inquisitor. Despite what he told Cassandra, Varric knew the entire time where Hawk had been.
I remember that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes.
It's so memorable.
And I feel so bad for both of them in it.
Well, they both have a point.
Yeah.
Because, Cassandra is enraged and confronts Varric about it, admitting that she had seeked out Hawk to ask him to become the Inquisitor because she knew an Inquisition was going to be formed. Varric felt that Kirkwall had done enough to Hawk and his family and helped his friend escape that fate. So they both have a good point. Like, Hawk has sacrificed a lot.
Yeah.
And depending on your choices, Inquisition sometimes even sacrifices much more.
Right.
So to have Varric be such a friend to Hawk, be like, look, this person has done enough. They are a hero and a legend, and now it's their time to rest. Like, they don't have to do anything else ever again. Why are you asking them?
If I remember the exact line, it's, you people have done enough.
Yeah, exactly. And Cassandra is more just kind of like, we needed a beacon of hope, and the champion of Kirkwall could have been that for the Inquisition.
Right.
And instead, you got this random person who happens to just have walked in at the right time to get a mark on their hand.
Well, if I remember correctly, that's because Inquisition was originally a DLC for Dragon Age 2. Yeah, you didn't know this?
No, I didn't.
So Inquisition originally started as a DLC where you would be Hawk, but when Dragon Age 2 had so many problems,
right,
they redid the story and created the Inquisitor. It was supposed to be Hawk.
Oh, wow, interesting.
From what I remember reading.
Okay, we'll
you may want to look into that yourself.
I'll have to verify that somehow. It's soon after this that Bianca would meet Varric Skyhold, and which, for those of you who don't know, so the game starts at Haven. Corypheus attacks Haven with the forces that he's enlisted.
Yeah, it's that whole act structure that BioWare does.
Yeah, and this one, the acts are much more like a play. They do tie together. They are all building on top of each other. So unlike Dragon Age 2, where it's novelettes, this is more like just a full-on play.
Yeah.
Play. And so they end up at Skyhold, thanks to Solus being like, hey, I know where this random
Without a
fort
doubt,
is.
One of my favorite sequences in any game is one that most people don't like.
Yeah.
Which is everybody singing.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, it took me a couple views of that to really understand that this is a hymn they all know.
Oh, I got that immediately.
I think it took me like the second time. I'm like, oh, that's why they all know this. This is something they've all been taught for years.
You have to think about it. Like, and it might be different for me because as much as we were both raised Catholic, like, I went to Catholic school, so that stuff's even more ingrained. It's this thing that you've sung every week, every holiday.
Yeah.
And if you
Is
think
it
about,
is it a cheesy scene in some ways? Yes.
But I think
Because immediately everyone has stereo quality singing.
I think
Or studio quality singing.
sometimes though, if you're gonna feast on a good story, you should add a little cheese. Like it's
Yeah.
fine. It's
But then
fine.
after that, you have this great conversation with Solus.
Yeah.
And then you just have this amazing montage.
We're gonna have a montage.
That ends with this
Montage.
awesome reveal of Skyhold.
Yes.
And it's great because if you watch Let's Plays of Inquisition, people will be watching that and they're like, what? And then all the comments will be like, oh, well, now the game's actually starting for you.
Right. No, and it's funny because, like, everything that's happening in Haven is actually very compelling, and you were, like, you're into it and you like it. And then and the thing is, once you know where the story ends and where it's going, and especially how Trespasser ends, there's parts of it that just click. You watch it again, you see different things. Like, when I first watched it and I first saw the Inquisitors, like, awe at Skyhold and excitement once Solus points it out. Like, that was so great. And then to see Solus kind of, like, have this sly look of, like, this is working the way I want it to. And it's just like, ah! Okay. All right, moving on. So, back to Bianca, who meets Varric up at Skyhold. She lets them know a solid lead on Corypheus' sources of red lyrium. She also says the location of the primeval thaig that Bartrand had found, which is now referred to as Bartrand's Folly to some.
Okay.
That location has been leaked. Concerned, Varric and the Inquisitor can join Bianca to follow this lead to the Deep Roads entrance in Valimar. As they investigate the poorly, quote-unquote, insulated supply of red lyrium, they're like, just dealing with it in wood boxes. Like, they're not even trying to protect it to the same level that Varric is with that one shard he has.
I totally forgot about this part of the game.
You did?
I totally forgot about this part of the game.
Oh,
okay,
let's reinvigorate some memories here. The Inquisitor and Varric realized that the only lead to the thaig would have to be Bianca, who Varric had written to in confidence about his Deep Roads expedition and what they found and how he was left behind and all of that. She does admit that she did seek out help from a Grey Warden mage, who turns out to be the surviving Grey Warden leader that Hawk helped with the Corypheus originally. This warden was given a key to the thaig, one that Bianca was using to try and continue to research the red lyrium. Varric is furious about the risks that Bianca took, and both leave angry at each other in only that way that unrequited love can make you feel.
So that's why that choice in the tapestry matters.
Yes.
Of who survived Legacy.
Because
Okay.
that person ends up being under the influence of Corypheus in the long run.
Okay, I totally forgot that. And I've been doing tapestry lately for a let's play. Just I've been doing tapestry lately and being like, why does this matter? Like, why do have these choices matter? And I forget that a lot of those choices have very small consequences.
Yeah.
Or, single scene consequences.
Yeah, like this is essentially, it's the difference between Bianca mentioning Larius or Janenka. That's literally the difference. And there's clues as to which one or the other. For example, Larius is not a mage. So if she says, I went to a mage and I talked to Larius, it's Larius is lying. He's never was a mage. He's a fighter. Janenka was the mage. That kind of stuff.
Okay.
So
I have some newfound respect there for them being able to chain all these variables and make them all matter.
yeah.
And not screw them up like they did with Conrad Werner.
Right, exactly. Also, this is when Bianca will mention, just for a general lore sake, that the red lyrium is a lyrium that's been blighted.
Right.
And that's why it's kind of fraught to think of it as a mineral to be ored. It is definitely something that is alive. And again, our mini episode will cover what that means.
Okay.
Based on some DLC for Inquisition. Just listen to that. We're not going to get into that right now. Players of Inquisition may also get a mission on the war table to find out who is slandering Varric. Someone has made a bootleg sequel to his popular book series, Hard in Hightown. First of all, if you don't know, they have a book version of it. We own it. And yes, all the characters of prominence are based on characters Varric knows from Dragon Age 2. It's a must-have for superfans. Please get it. It's it just makes you happy. It just makes you happy if you're a super fan. Second, if you investigate, it turns out the dwarven runecrafter named Worthy is behind the bad sequel, as well as accusing Varric of crimes back in Kirkwall. He was jealous that after his dealings with Varric in Kirkwall, that he was not invited to help the Inquisition with his business, so he decided this was the best way to enact revenge. Worthy, who, like, I didn't even mention when we talked about Kirkwall earlier because he's such kind of a footnote. He's just a runecrafter that you meet regardless of who Hawk works with. And they were like, let's work him in a little bit in Inquisition. And this is how they did it.
Annoyingly, I also was about to go, oh, we do have a copy of one of his books. I was going to be like, who got... And I was like, right, you did.
Yes. Mystic bought that for me. Was that a Christmas present? I think that was a Christmas present.
I don't remember.
In fact, the Inquisitor may find out that Cassandra is a fan of one of Varric's other book series.
Another great scene.
Swords and Shields. It's so great. These scenes are written so well. She reads it in spite of herself. And if the Inquisitor feels like doing a favor, they can encourage Varric to finish the next book in the series for Cassandra to finally not have her favorite series end with an unfulfilling cliffhanger. Like, literally, Varric says, it doesn't even sell that well. They didn't ask me to finish it.
I think he calls it his least successful series.
Yeah, exactly. But she's obsessed with it. It's just so genuinely cute. After the Inquisition finishes Corypheus for good, Varric goes back to invest in reconstruction efforts in Kirkwall. He starts these projects in earnest only to find them halted due to the fact that Kirkwall does not have a Viscount. Varric makes complaints to the other nobles of Kirkwall, who quickly decide on a solution that the concerned Varric would be the obvious choice for the position. Once the Inquisitor sees him return in the DLC Trespasser, Varric has been serving as Viscount for some time. He also added to his published works a story of the Inquisition itself, which, being family-friendly, I can't read the title of. It has a curse word in the title. Listen to the credits for Trespasser, and you will hear Cassandra reading this story in earnest, and she gets to comment on how well he portrays the other people in the Inquisition. Returning to the comic books and the quote-unquote BioWare canon, King Alistair sends Sir Aaron Hawthorne and his elf squire Vea to attend a ceremony of Varric's appointment of Viscount in Kirkwall. And this is in the beginning of the comic Knight Errant. While it appears that Varric is a good host to Sir Aaron while Vea slinks away to perform a thievery job, when she returns to Hightown, Varric meets her and lets her know that he's aware she's not just an ordinary squire. He escorts her back to the party with Sir Aaron to help her not be missed. Varric also escorts the two to Starkhaven, where Vea's thieving talents become intertwined with a venatory plot to steal notes regarding the nature and location of Red Lyrium. One last thing to explain. The Venatory are a nationalistic cultist group of the Tevinter Imperium, believing that an elder god would restore their former glory of the nation. They, at least at some point, thought that was Corypheus, and were very much associated with his stuff. When the dust is settled and Vea is able to get the information needed for the Inquisition, she and Sir Aaron meet with Varric outside of Starkhaven. They find out that Red Lyrium may have already crossed into Vinter, where Sir Aaron and Vea decide to follow the lead. Where the story is now, there are indications in the Compendium of Stories into Venter Knights that Varric is still helping the Inquisition, even if he's not part of it officially. He kind of actually says in Knight Errant that he's no longer part of the Inquisition, but he still does favors for them. I won't divulge further because I know Mystic is reading the book and I wouldn't want to spoil those juicy cameo moments, but it sounds like they're really just juicy cameo moments. It's a lot of like him connecting threads for people that are related to the Inquisition.
Okay.
And probably from afar because, you know, it's all associating with stuff with Tevinter.
All right.
So he's still able to do that. I mean, he still has his spy network connections. And with that, right now, what happens next, we have to speculate because, you know, it's implied with the trailers that came out in December 2020 for Dragon Age 4 that Varric kind of is helping to choose who this next hero of the series is going to be. Yeah. We don't know if that's going to be the final product. Obviously, things can change a lot in a year or 2 or 5, however long it's going to take for this to come out. But it's implied that he's involved still, even though he's still Viscount of Kirkwall.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's the current history of Varric Tethras. If you know, when the new games come out, maybe we will put an addendum out there.
Yeah.
Later. But I'm hoping celebrating this fellow lore appreciator, because he does appreciate a good hero story.
He does.
So, I thought that might help celebrate our 50th episode. Woo, we made it! 5-0.
Yeah.
Woo.
But not 2 years yet.
Not 2 years yet. Almost.
That'll be episode 52 will be the 2-year anniversary, or the end of the second year, quote unquote.
Yes. So I hope you enjoyed it, Mystic. It seems like you not only learned but remembered a lot.
Yeah, there was some stuff I didn't know and some stuff that I just totally forgot happened. So
yeah, it's funny. He's tied to a lot of like deeper lore that we could get into more specifically. It might be worth having a mini episode just talking about lyrium itself, so maybe I'll work on that next. And
works for me.
Yeah. But I hope you all liked listening too. And thanks for joining us as I got to geek out about one of my favorite series.
Again.
It's been a while.
It's true.
It's been a while. And do you know what you're doing next time, Mystic? Or
Now, you can't look this up, Sapphy.
I won't.
But we'll be using a resource called the Encyclopedia for Bazica.
I have no idea what that is off the top of my head. I'm going to find out later, aren't I?
You're going to find out next time.
Okay.
Needless to say, there is a lot of lore to a franchise I never expected to have a lot of lore.
That's always the exciting part.
But, yeah, so we'll cover that next time. Nobody tell Sapphy if you know what it is.
Okay. It's been decreed. Don't tell me.
And we will catch you guys next time.
Next time. Bye.
Bye.